Good morning, everyone. I hope that theme song put you in a better mood. It always puts me in a better mood. Welcome to Morning Jumpstart. I am Jason Meyer, and today, I believe it's 5 we're looking at. We're going to start with Susan and Millie in active service. And then we're going to move from Millie to a few still lifes. We'll have Wendy up first. And then there's Katie and Jan, and I think you guys may have do-si-doed in the program. So one of you's first and one of you's second after that. So that's third and fourth. We'll look at Shakti for fifth, and then we're got a still life. Not the still life, the landscape. I believe Katie turned that in. So that'll be the order of the show, and I will do my doggest, something like that, to see if we can't get this handled in 1 hour. So let's see who's out there in the internet world. Miss Shakti's ready to go. Good morning, good morning. Wendy's ready. All right, the one and only Susan. Tom, ooh, we got a full house today. A full house, great, great. And it's never a party till Claudia shows up. It's not officially a party till Claudia's here. So welcome, everybody. Welcome, welcome. Well, shall we dive right in and get started? Are there any announcements? I don't know. We need to get announcements that just come up on the screen. Or I need to change my evil ways. I don't know. One of the two. We'll get it figured out. As far as announcements, this being Tuesday morning, we'll have Sketch Club tonight. And tomorrow there'll be another morning jump start at 8 a.m. At 1 p.m., I should be going live on Instagram. Spent the day setting up and then figured out everything I didn't work. So we'll see if we get that figured out today. I'm sure we will. And then tomorrow night, Masterworks. So 7 o'clock tonight on Facebook, 8 o'clock in the morning on YouTube, 1 o'clock in the afternoon tomorrow, we're going over mediums, and that will be on Art Central. It'll be at Art Central Slow on Instagram. And tomorrow night will be Masterworks. So there's a few places you can catch us if you like. Catch us if you like. Oops. We got to share with you what I'm seeing. All right, we got the volumes up and working, the microphone's on, and everything. All right. So, I can't remember if this is the color study. If you can, Susan, let me know what size this is. I know you started your study on a 5x7, and so I'm thinking that was this one. But just remind me. I'm going to go ahead and say the same things, but again, if this is a 5" by 7". There's different expectations if it's than a 12x16 or something. Okay, so just take that in consideration. And as always, the photos are almost never really accurate. So if you are up and you are able, when I'm up to you, let me know if it's off a little bit and how it is. Again, all I can do is go off the photo, but if your painting looks different, you have to judge it by your painting in person, in life. Okay. Hey, evidently it's Mardi Gras. Happy Mardi Gras. Masterworks. She's got it. Okay, Susan's already on top of it. It's a 9x12. Okay, great. That helps out a lot. Yes, Susan never fails to delight. So I think what I want to talk about, Susan, is we understand the 1, 2, 3, 4 pretty well with you. So I'm going to really jump right to the finish. right? And how we really want to finish this up and what little things we might do to get that. And we'll go from there. So for whoever I'm on, I'm doing my best to tell you the next steps, and that includes what you need to be working on in your artistic development. All right, and whenever I'm being honest, most of my time, the biggest amount of my time is spent looking, right? If you're gonna paint, you've got to see. Right? And to see takes a little time, a little awareness. So the idea here is to have a little quiet start over here, right? That brings us, this is going to be relatively quiet, but it'll be a step off to bring us up to here. And the really big deal, right? The really big deal will be right in here. What do I mean by the really big deal? Well, we're going to have some white right there, which is very powerful. We're going to have some highlight right there, which is white, which is very powerful. I'm probably going to, maybe not white, but make sure there's some highlights on there. Right? Play up these kind of plane changes. Again, so the idea here, it's going to be a strong color, but in addition to that, you want to think details, right? But when you think details, it's just not details everywhere. You have to include details in the principle of more or less. Okay? So in other words, since this is part of the big deal, then this end of the goggles, this portion of the goggles, right here, I'm going to try to show more detail, a little more definition, harder edges, bigger separation than I will down here. And I can see you've already started that. So the reason I wanted to continue on that, because most of the painting is going to be carried right there. And what do I mean by that? Well, there's really not a lot of quote-unquote detail in fur, right? We're going to imply fur with the edges, but really it's the value that's going to catch us there. The little light dark is going to catch us there on the nose. We're going to get, again, a good highlight or white that will catch us there. But here we have a chance for plane changes and drawing, right, that we don't have anywhere else. In some sense, we're depending on the structure of these goggles to make the fur look furry, the air look airy, and in other words, I want you, Susan, to be thinking about these materials not as materials, but as different ways to apply paint and different things you can do with paint. Again, to make it most in its category, but different than the most in other categories. Okay? Man, did we just start in the deep end? Woo! Where did we wake up this morning? Where did we wake up this morning? All right. Okay, so Susan says the values are pretty close, and that's true, and I want to talk a little bit about that. But again, the details and what we do with where we look and where we don't look will also affect the look of the values. Okay? So again, I want you to check your values and everything. But as you get all of this in here, let's see. So she says values, and what I think the value is the background. So I know we want to make this stormy. And the other thing with the background here that's going to help a lot, the white will be cool for sure. The black will be cool on the dog. Other than that, the grays, we can keep them slightly warmer. And in the background, make sure your grays are on the cooler side. Right? You can still go darker and warmer. Whoops, measure matters. So this is going to do a couple of things here if we go cooler. So the first thing it's going to do is it's going to separate from Millie really, really well. And the other thing it's going to do is it's going to quiet that blue. Right, and we can have variety here. But again, I just want you to see with just this, yeah, there's value change, but it's also a temperature change. So this is a cool gray. And then let's see if on Millie we can't work in the warm grays. Okay. One last thing here. This background that I'm doing doesn't, right? It's a definite change. And again, the painting may look a little different. But this is real important, right? And this goes for everybody. We're going to get into the still life here in just a second. But this background that I'm putting on right now, watch what happens if I take it from this side of the painting all the way to the other side of the painting. Do you guys see, even without doing a lot of value change, it just completely opened this thing up? Okay, so a big theme that we're getting onto, because a lot of you are really figuring out, man, how to make those colors pop, right? But when we first start to make them pop, and when I was studying my oranges, I had the same problem, right? But it's, after watching students learn this and learn this and learn this, you see it's a common pattern. We first have to get the separation, but then again, we got to still invite them to the barbecue. We've got to invite them to the barbecue. And so by going side to side, that really changes things. Now, we can decide how big we want to go side to side. What does that mean? Well, it could be really small, light, hitting side to side. Right? Something like that. Or, right? It could be even more like this. So that feeling of not being so dark, this is how you fix that right here. It's the proportion of the values. And not only that, but now that light is part of a bigger thing. And it makes a big difference if it goes from edge to edge. Right? And why? Because this is expansive, right? We expand. So we need that in landscape. Not only do we need it in landscape, but we're about to see how we need it in still life. Okay, Susan, I hope I didn't jump too far ahead of you on that. I hope I didn't jump too far ahead of you. Like even at the stage it's in right now, and many of you are right here too, what I would do next is start seeing how little you can work on. Right? What do I mean by that? Well, let's come right up here to the nose. What is that? So that's definition, right? So by just getting a, right, you see how man, let's make sure that pops. And no, I know this is a start, but again, I'm just trying to give you hints of where to go, and maybe some of the hair's falling over, and maybe some of it. There, we've got the fur going there. Okay, then on that part of the glasses, I'm not going to do anything. Why? Because that is where we take the opportunity to talk about fur. And as you guys know who've been around, right, if you talk about too much at one time, nobody can hear you. So let's talk about nose and highlight. Let's talk about fur. Forget the goggles. And then the next thing we want to see is I want you to make sure that this eye is literally the darkest thing on the whole canvas. Right? That there's no other dark. Now, there doesn't have to be a big, right? There can be dark that comes close. But make sure this appears the darkest. And one way you can do that is making it the darkest, but also finding some good hard edges in there. And then when you do that, that'll set you up for your highlight. This highlight in here, I'm going to find an excuse, even if it's on the end of a toothpick, to go from white to a little bit of blue. Oops, too much. I want to soften some of those edges. Okay, so you see how we're kind of setting all this up? And then I like how we jump over to the side just a little bit. And again, see if we can get a nice crisp edge right here. And that will be done by two things. One, that lighter thing there, but what else do we need? Well, how do we make anything look three-dimensional? Light, shadow, and air. Right, now again, I'm not going to put that 3 value on every piece of this. But right, I'm going to use that and make a clean pattern, right, with flat paint. Why? Because we talked about getting them right here. So look, as I flatten this paint out, it has more power. Even small pieces of paint, if I flatten, it has more power because there's no changes our eye is trying to register. Okay, and then I would continue with this little cycle right here, boom, boom, something like that. Okay, and you remember when we went to side, how that really opened everything up? Let's try one more thing quickly here. Instead of side to side, and what else did we say about this? We said it needed to be a cool gray, and then let Millie be warm gray. Now watch as instead of going directly side to side, what if I gave that, again, going from one side to the other side, but instead of going horizontally across, I make more of a diagonal. Right? The reason I'm going over this is because this right now is the time to make these decisions. Right? And notice by using this background as I'm using it, it's highlighting the areas. In other words, it's working in concert with, we were doing that, and so we extended that movement. Instead of having a little stunted movement like that, we say, no, this is a big movement. Then our little windshield wipers and stuff, maybe these little movements like that. The glasses may have little movements like that. The scarf. But if all we have are these little movements, again, things feel choppy, 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 choppy. So let's look for a big movement and then some little movements. Okay, I'm sorry guys, I jumped right down the rabbit hole, didn't I? But I hope you guys thought that was good stuff. And in addition, look, if that's too fast, what can I do? Well, I could highlight this a little bit. I could change that angle to more or less steep. I could even let this run off the top there. And now so I felt it was important because what you do with this background affects this painting as much as anything else. Okay? Another way I'm to take this, it really matters. If we're here, it really matters how we step off of here. Right? And without that step off, it doesn't feel complete. Right? Like this is fantastic, but she feels small. So how do we make it bigger? We expand. We're going to expand the light. Right? Not the highlight, not our focus, not what we're looking at, but by making the background a little lighter. Okay, so let's start there. Just for, if I haven't given you too much already, you have the ID here. I'm going to come in and again, maybe have almost a little highlight. It's not, now this is fabric, so it's not going to highlight like the rest of it, but just a little lighter blue. And again, with your values, turn these. I like some of these shapes you're getting in here, but we can add a little more definition to that. These colors look a little warm to me. Again, I don't know if that's the photograph or what, but all right, let's leave that there. Let's leave that there. Let's see. Okay, pure annoying. Yeah, where and what you want to go. Because our, again, there's the aesthetic foreground and there's the picture plane foreground and background. All right, good. And Shakti got some things out of it. Good, 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 good. All right, thanks everybody. So again, I'm not going to repeat those principles, but we're going to talk about those same principles as we go forward. Again, if all I can do is refer to these paintings here and the colors I see, like that background looks a little yellow to me. I don't know if it's actually that yellow. So again, just hear the direction I'm sending you rather than necessarily trying to copy exact colors or even exact values. Like in that last one, maybe that exact value of the background wasn't right, or maybe the rest of the background need to be lightened up a little more too. Okay, but again, these are just general directions. Okay, so I'm seeing some good values, right? This thing's starting to light up. And again, this is just the start of a painting. But so the idea is not, oh, you did this wrong, but the idea is where do we go from here and how can we make it stronger, okay? So I see we talked about this, and I don't remember if it was this painting or somebody else's, but you'll see the same sorts of problems come up again and again and again, right? And this is natural. This is natural. So what I'm seeing right now is I'm having a hard time knowing where to start. You know, should I start there or should we start there? Right, so it's a little confusing. That looks equal almost to that. And so we need to make a decision, you know, which way we can only go one direction. We only have time to go to one of our destinations. Where are we going to go? Where are we going to go? And the same thing here. We've got light here. And we have light. Now I know this is glare, so I'm not counting this. But this is appearing light to me too, right? And so what that means is that the channel for the water to run is really, really wide. And so the water is going to run really slow through there. And if, you know, there's not enough direction and enough pressure, what happens is that movement just starts to stand still. And that's what we want to avoid, is that stillness of the movement. So I'm just going to pick a movement here, and you can change it. You can change it up if you want. But let's see what it would be like to pick a movement. Now I think I might have talked about coming through here and up like that, and I think that's a good movement. But we can also kind of combine it with the idea of getting, right, the light being less here and there being more light at this end. And that's where some of the confusion comes. Okay, so how do I do all of that together? Okay, well, let's look at that. Again, this is going to be fast, rough and fast, but I think you'll get the sense here. Again, I don't know if this is a little too green or not. I have a feeling it's more camera, so this color may be a little bit off. But one of the things I'm going to do is I'm going to compress this light over here. In other words, I'm going to take all of this out, or move this riverbank, right, compress it, and I want to compress this down here too a little bit. And what that does is that channel gets smaller. What happens? Well, it speeds up the water, right? This is where the rapids occur. I hope that makes sense. So all I'm trying to do is make this background movement a little faster and make the movement a little cleaner. And this does seem a little too green to me, so there we go. Just on the screen there. So if we take like most of this out, and again, it can have a little gradation, but as far as the light goes. And then the other thing, like if we wanted, I might let it escape up there, but then either whether it's a gray or a hard edge, we do want to try to hold that light in a little bit there. Okay. Down here too, probably at the bottom, I would hold it. At the most, I would go gray. And then some corners can be tricky. Corners can be tricky because they're so catchy. They're so catchy. Right? So even in here, I might at least give it a little bit of that. Okay? And then I think I would take... So you see how we're already getting... It's a little more focused. It seems a little more intense. So what I did, just so we're clear, what I did was the same thing, the exact same thing I did here. But in this one, right, there was too much dark, so I had to insert the lighter background, right? Again, to reinforce that movement of the whole. In this one, I had to take some of the light out so that we get that. And again, we can compress this here. And then what would happen if, what if, but what if we just made this not quite so light? Right? All the light doesn't have to be equal. And again, I know this is a start, but I want to show you. Right? So you see what I have on my brush right now? That could be the light for the background. Right? The light of the background doesn't have to be, and it needs not to be as light as the foreground. And that's going to give that pear some extra power. And we want to make sure those shadows, let's go ahead and do a little bit of this here. And then if we're going to be that dark, right, and if the table is going to get a little darker even still and richer, right, like if our table's that dark, how are we going to make sure that this thing still seems lit? And remember, the answer is in enough value difference. See if I can find a little bit warmer here. Warmer with no white in it. See if that'll work. A definite value difference, but also remember hard edge. Right? Make it very clear what has the difference between light and the absence of light. Right? Make very clear who's the devil and who's the good guy. Right? And so we know the edges will do that, those outside edges. The inside edges have to be hard. But do you see how effective that is? And that way we can get into some of these darker, richer tones and they still be lit up. Okay? And if we do that, what that allows us to do again is now we can come in here to the pear, and it doesn't have to be quite so white, but we could even add some color to it, and we can still get it to appear lit. Right? And then what that does by bringing that value down is give that highlight so much more power. Okay, so again, I hope that wasn't too much, but what did we talk about here? Well, the first thing we talked about was getting, Oh, Jason. Jason, Jason, Jason. You and your lack of layers. You're so one-dimensional. So one-dimensional. Right? But we talked about getting a more specific movement. Right? So instead of being able to go to all of those places, what did we do? Well, we took that out. We took that out. And we compressed that. And then we ended up saying, how dark can we go here and it still appear light? Right? And then we really lit up with those edges. Okay? And of course, just can't leave that with that big light hole there. Anybody ever call you a light hole? Huh? You're such a light hole. Does that mean, why can I not hit this button? There we go. A light hole. So would that mean that you have an absence of light? Or that you suck light? I don't know. I started to think it was a compliment, but now that I think about it, it sounds like an insult. So, I don't know. I would think about that before I'd use that. Don't just be going anything you hear. And look, we can get lighter, and as I get lighter over here, what else do? I get grayer, right? So we're taking the chroma out. So I could still stay almost at that value you have, but take the chroma out. And then to make sure, again, remember how powerful that warm is, and look how light that is. That's a foreground light. This is a background light here. All right, so that may be a little bit, if you want those lighter, you can have them lighter. But make sure it's a background light, right? And that's a little blue, you might want that. That's fine, however color you want. But we have to make sure. Now, as I see that, this is, man, it's competing. There's competition. So do I have to change that value? Do I have to change that value? No. You don't have to, but you do have to change the look of that value. But we can do that. We can do that just by softening edges. If we soften these edges, this value won't look as bright. The other thing we can do is we could make less of that lighter value. In other words, make it smaller. Right? So there's many ways that we can handle this. Right? But just softening the edges, because you remember we went and made hard edges on the shadow of the pear, and that hard edge, right, jumped, make it appear lit. Well, the other end of that stick is soft edges. Right? Don't just drag that stick around. Make sure you got both edges of that stick up off the ground. Now you can flip it over, use that end of the stick, this end of the stick. That's a two-ended stick, man. Don't be using just half of that. You're not getting your money's worth. Okay, so does everybody see how that can work? So even with edges, soften some of these outside edges here, see less impact. So if you keep and save those hard edges for those shadows, right, for these key places where we need to look in the foreground, boy howdy. All right. Thanks. Pear begins to shine. Yeah. that background's funny, but remember, you've got to have a certain amount. And I say remember because it's never one thing. It's never one thing. We've got to have a certain amount of this background light. But this background light doesn't need to be equal impact to that. Right? Both when it's small and when it's ending. Right? Make sure this guy wins, but make sure this is still one river. Right? This might be the best rapids in the river, but we don't want to get in the water, get out of the water, carry our boat, get back in the water, get out of the water, carry our boat. Right? No, make it one smooth journey. All right. Okay. Good job. Good job. Should we see one more before and after? So that big movement, those big pieces, and notice how sloppy this is, but it's still powerful, right? So value, then we can go in and fine tune. How are we doing? Okay. So let us go on. Here we go. So fantastic. Man, get that guy. Don't you hate it? You go to the museum and that guy just stands right in front of you. You're sitting there looking and they just walk right up and stand right in front of you. Sorry, man. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to keep this smaller and then I'm going to black out the fence. Okay, now we can see this a little easier. Okay, so I think what I would do here is I would kind of gray these colors and values. Like that's a pretty high value there. Can we take that down? We take that even down to like there. Right, and then you see that chroma still feels pretty high too, so maybe we need to gray that off a little bit. And when we gray it off, I know it's very subtle, but can you guys see that difference between one has a bit of blue in it, the other has a bit of yellow in it? Right? If things are coming forward, if you can even just make that switch from that out of that yellowness into that blue coolness, boy, it just makes such a difference. Right? And that's still reading pretty loud. So I probably would end up back here somewhere. Take that down. Then with those reds, same thing. So you got the right idea, and I love all these little pieces you have, but now we just want to quiet some of this down a little bit. Quiet it down a little bit. Right? Like that doesn't look nearly red, but it's going to read. It'll read once we get going. Right? And again, you see all the yellow in her face? That's just so strong. And again, I know that looks like a yucky color, but do you see how this is looking more backgroundy? Right? And our priority has to be backgroundy. That's a word, right? Backgroundy. Oh, yeah, Webster just wrote in. Backgroundy. New word. Okay, that needs to be the lightest light, and I went too dark there. So, You know, sometimes it may take a few, but try to see how light you can make it. No, I'm sorry. How small of a change that you can make between them and them still work. And that also will look what? It'll look what? You got it. Backgroundy. Backgroundy. You know who specializes in backgroundy? You know who specializes in that? Bridget. Bridget does. And again, let's just go to a little cooler, darker there, and I think that's going to give our pear a little bit more life. So on this one, I think it's going to be about playing those backgrounds down a little bit. And now that we're adjusting that first green I started with that appeared too gray is now appearing like too colorful. So as you adjust that will adjust everything. And what we're doing is we're trying to adjust it to get a little more power out of the pear. How can we make that pear a little more powerful? Well, that light's pretty light, and I'm not going to start on that light. But let me see if I can have a really nice firm dark. So what I want to see is can I leave that table that dark and still have this pear look like it's actually sitting on there and that dark is light. So I'm going to see if I can make your table appear like it's lit. Again, so a lot of this light comes from that shadow. So now let's go from there to there for the table. So same value. And the other part of the shadow is it's warmer than that tabletop. So the coolness is also the look of light. Okay, and then what that allows us to do, and again, this might be the photograph, I don't know, is allow us just to pick a richer tone, a little bit of a richer tone, meaning it can be a little darker, doesn't have to have so much white in it. And if we do that, the painting will appear to be more colorful. Right? So what we're going to learn eventually is that there's a certain quantity of quote-unquote color required in a painting. There's a certain quantity of quote-unquote dark. There's a certain quantity of quote-unquote white. And paintings are really made up of the orchestration of those quantities. Just like food recipes are made up of the orchestration of the ingredients. Right? But every recipe doesn't require completely different ingredients. Right? So what we're learning is that these four values are our ingredients. Right? And the proportions we use them in, do we use red peppers or green peppers, right? All of that. Then that'll allow us to go oopsie-daisy with a nice little highlight there. Okay, so, and I think what that'll do is if we can keep some of that off the white, then it'll appear more colorful and it'll have a little more power. Oops. Oh my gosh. I need to see. I seriously have a layering problem. I seriously have a layering problem. So unfortunately, because of my layering problem, it's going to be very difficult to see before and after without 1,000 little ticks. But we'll see what we can do here. We'll see what we can do here. Okay, and then maybe to drive it home, since I messed up that, let's watch this real quick. Okay, so I hope that helps. I hope that helps. How are we doing? Okay. Keeping the color, but appropriately graying the color in the right places. Yeah, that. So it's a challenge, but again, it's important to see the problem for what it is. So many times in painting, as we're getting better, we think the problem's something it's not. All right? So again, the values and the quote-unquote color and grayness, there's a correspondence to those. There's a correspondence. All right, let's see what else we got, shall we? I promised you guys an hour. Am I going to be able to keep that word? All right, I think you guys, right, we can see it. So let's start with value number 4. Make sure our value number 4 is the real deal. Now, again, there's some beautiful, beautiful things happening on all of these guys. I don't appreciate like where you're going and where you've come. There's some great, great stuff happen. But I don't know. I don't make the best cheerleader. But let's get this to a museum. So look, the look of light is as much as shadow as it is light. So that grape is casting a shadow. So let me just put that right there and make that a nice hard edge. And then let's make sure I've got a nice hard edge coming out of that. You see how that cast shadow can almost invent the object that wasn't there? Give it actual substance. Without shadow, light has no substance. Oof. Now you're just talking scary talk. You're just trying to scare me now. No, it's true. And once you start practicing it, you can see it. Without shadow, light has no substance. Oh, is my layering? Oh, look at that. Ah, good layer, Jason. Good layer. See the difference there? Things get mushy. The structure and the sense of light is both in the shadow. Or at least the shadow's part of that sense of light. So let's get some shadows in there. Layer 1, layer up again, Jason. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Will do. Will do. Then I want to compress this light a little bit. Again, this is going to be a little sloppy just because I ran my mouth and we're running a little late. But let's compress. And so what am I doing when I'm compressing this light? Well, one of the things we're looking at is what is this shape that the light is giving us. And when we look at this overall shape, it's not very active. Right? And again, that's what we started with Millie and on the first still lifes. So how can we get this shape more active? Well, let's take a little bit of this out. All right. Let's just kind of hold them in there. Let's compress down here a bit. So let's hold them on the table. let's hold them down towards the table, at least until we start getting close to the pear. Okay? And then after we're close to the pear, let's send them from the table. Let's send them from the table to the background. And then once they're in the background, let's kind of send them up. That should be, just do it. Don't say it. Don't tell me, show me. Okay, okay, okay. Here we go. So what did we do here with the light? Well, we took it out of here and we took it out of here. And so what that does is it lets us go along the table and then, right, so that the table occupies this space, then we make a transition and the background occupies this space, aesthetically speaking, right, for our light movement. Okay, so I think we're going to leave that there. I love the grayness back here. I think the one thing I might say about this back there is, again, the value. Can we get that value darker than that pear? Right, that's pretty light. That's pretty light. Could we somehow make that appear light? Okay, so let's make that a challenge to ourselves. How can we make this now the light of the background? Well, that's easy, right? Because it's all relative. Oops. That seems to be maybe coming into my shadow a little bit, so let me bring that up. Shadow in the fore. So what I want to make sure is that this back here, see how close that is to that shadow? I just want to make sure that that's separate. Got to make sure that's separate, either color or value or both. Now that feels like I can still separate very well. Whoop. Easy. Easy, tiger. But what's the task at hand? Well, it's making that dark gray that I put on the light. And then what are we doing? We're going to a red. And we're going not quite so dark, little more color. Right, do you guys see the value of really a little lighter for the skin tone? What? You're telling me that's her orange face? Yes, I am. Yes, I am. Right? See when I put that around that green, how that green just, boom. Who's the boss now? Who's the boss now? Okay, so again, more separation from your picture plane foreground and your picture plane background. Right, so in other words, we want to talk picture plane, meaning this is first, right? Then we run into this, and then this is back behind, right? So this is picture plane foreground, picture plane middle ground, picture plane background. But we don't necessarily want to look, right, all the way through all of them. So this is aesthetic foreground in the picture plane foreground. This is aesthetic foreground in the picture plane middle ground. This is aesthetic foreground in the picture plane background. So I hope that makes sense, right? Aesthetic foreground and background is simply where we want them to look. Picture plane foreground and background is where is it in space, meaning this is foreground because it's closer to us. This is middle ground because it's between the closer to us and the far away from us. Okay, so we've got to keep both of those things clear. Picture plane foreground and background and aesthetic foreground and background. And so what we've talked about more today is controlling and making more active that aesthetic foreground and background. Okay, so we're going to do shadows, get our shadows in there, get that aesthetic foreground, background going, and then make sure your picture plane foreground and background is going. All right, I know that's a little hot and heavy this morning, but I guess that's how I woke up. I don't know. So we're going to go a few minutes over, but I'm going to try not to go too far. So here, what are we doing? Well, we're going to do the same thing. I want to expand here, but here we could do something slightly different, couldn't we? Well, if you say so, I don't know. So I want to get this a little bit more orangey. So this light, what if we expanded it almost like a triangle? Again, we can get picture plane foreground and background in here. But what if we just got a little bit bigger? I think we're going to expand. And let's go a little lighter, grayer for our background. Okay, so how is that? How is that? Well, the color's good, but that value's not working, is it? Darken that value. Is that? Well, that might. Again, this is going to depend on the mood you want. Right? That's closer, so there's not going to be as much drama. If you want a little more drama, keep going. Keep going. Okay, but these slight movements really matter. And so that's your next step is you've got a nice dark, you've got some nice light. Bring. Hello, can I speak to Bridget? Where's Bridget? Bridget! We need Bridget. Okay. We need Bridget to expand our light. Right? So that's what we're going to do there on that. Okay, so I hope that helps. If you need help on colors or something, let me, send me a note and we'll get on it. Oh my gosh, Jason, you are like the worst layerer in the world. Oof. Nobody should ever let you anywhere near layers. Okay, time-lapse replay. It's going to be short. So, right? It doesn't take a lot of that light to add the feeling of a lot of light in the painting. All right, let's see. How are we doing? Yeah, that shadow is so important. So important. Thank you, guys. Thank you. Okay, we got one landscape we're going to look at here real quick, and then we're going to let you guys loose in the studio. So very good. Right now, now again, I don't know what the thing, but that blue's feeling a little too strong. And why? This is the same thing, right? This blue is our background now. Right? This is our aesthetic background. Because this is our aesthetic foreground. We want a silhouetted tree that's going to be aesthetic foreground. And we want light on grass that's going to be. So in order, because if it's not, what happens to the aesthetic foreground is that blue becomes part of it. And then again, what is this shape? Right? The shape, it's too square. Okay, so what we want to do to make this painting more exciting, not the blue color more exciting, but the painting more exciting, is take that blue away. Take that blue away. We'll keep this gray a little bit warmer so that we can have that blue sky. But we want gray clouds in here. We want gray clouds so that, seems a little heavy. Seems a little heavy value-wise. Gray clouds seems too warm to me. How did that end up way down there? Oof. You know, sometimes it takes some... What is going on, guys? What is going on? All right, I think it's the relativity. So we've got to get some of this thing done. Because this is looking like red, but it's because there's so much blue in there. But what I want to do is try to take the color, the attraction, the beauty out of the sky. So I've got to find how little blue I can put in here and still make it appear blue. Right? And the reason for that is when you're up there, we want you to absolutely be going towards the white. Right? That there's no question about it. But then, okay, how do we expand that? Because it's kind of choppy, right? It's, oh, that light. So look, we could go into this blue a step or two. Near our cloud. Just like the pear's background, that blue is the cloud's background. And it sometimes you take that background and you go solid, that doesn't work so well. But if we say that's our brightest blue, and then how quickly do we need to walk off of that? You see how I can start to gray it off? And I can gray a little bit, right? Or I can let there be a bigger chunk of blue, and maybe in particular, we can let it run that way. So again, that would be me stepping off of that cloud. Stepping off of the cloud. Well, how would you do it into the gray? Well, maybe there's some little baby clouds, right, just floating. But look how small, much smaller they are, right? Oh, okay. And then now this gray next to it, that's quite a bit, man. Can we just chill out on that a little? All right, well, do we need some lighter grays in here? Right, but at no time as I'm stepping off of the white cloud does the white cloud lose. Right, that still has to be where we go. But the question is, how big of this area around it do we want to also have light? And as you now know, this needs a direction. We don't want to just do a box. Because it is part of the light movement. And sometimes it's a good idea. Sometimes it's a good idea. Like maybe it would be a really good idea to have a couple hard edges up here. And then look on this side. Maybe some softer edges. But now even within that shape, where are you going to go? Right there. Okay? So the other thing you want to do, you know, you're going right here, this is good, but we have to make sure, how about a layer, Jason? Okay, you got it. Look at how powerful a few little negative shapes are going to be. So it's going to take some time to make sure you've got that. And then the other thing is we want to make sure that we've got beautiful, 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 beautiful silhouette here. You know, maybe there's a sky hole in there or two, just to make it real. Just to make it real. Maybe we're going to dip down here a little bit. And then maybe we're going to run this way. And we might even... But see, as I expand this shape, what I want you to see... Oh, do you see how that feels bigger? And the bigness doesn't come from making... But we're... Again, spreading that. Instead of having a little shape like that. Right? And so what we're not doing is we're not taking it and going like a big box. But we are making it like more of a small... Right? Because that rectangle is more active than a big cube with equal sides, right? And then if we give it a little curve, some bigness and some smallness, then we've got a good shape. Got a good shape. Look at that, 9:15. Man, you just can't shut up, can you? I'm having a hard time. So that's what I would focus on in there. Your foreground here appears slightly dark to me. Slightly dark. Darker. Right, we could have, now this chroma may be a little bit hard, but let's get this, try to separate from this from your trees, and they may be already, but we can have a little bit of color here, but it just can't be as bright as that color in our background. Boom, boom, powerful. Okay, so now we're 15, an hour 15. We're going to get better and better at this. Better and better and better. Okay, so good job. I hope you got some good pointers from all of those. There we go. We'll leave that. Did I leave anything out? I think not. Yes, I did. There we go. All right. Yum, 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 yum. So striking. Yes. The shapes are so nice. So I was afraid you had to go to work, Shakti, so I'm glad you caught the end of yours. And I hope everybody was able to catch theirs. It'll be there live for them. So that's the end of the show this morning. Let's see, should we do-si-do? Let's do-si-do. End of the show this morning. We'll be back tonight for some sketch club. In the meantime, go work, have some fun. Right? Play with those values and colors. Want some strong paintings. All right, thank you everybody for your attention. I really appreciate it. You guys are doing beautiful work, beautiful work. Stay with it, stay with it, stay with it. All right, love you guys. We'll talk to you later. Bye-bye.